Hey, so good evening, everyone. My name is Maurya Hanspal, and in this session, we're going to continue our previous session on analyzing the annual report of a company. And this is the session number 10 on reading and analyzing the annual report of the company in detail. So, in the previous session, we began with the notes to accounts and we stopped here in the notes to accounts. Just a second. Yeah. Yeah, so we were talking about all these impairment of assets and the derivatives, earning per share, cash and cash equivalents. So all this we talked about, and we stopped here at the property, plant, and equipment. So, like, if you want to know about the property, plant, and equipment that the company is owning, how much property, plant, and equipment that the company has, at what price the company purchased those like property, plant, and equipment. Okay, that was basically the gross value. The gross value is nothing but the price at which they purchased the property, plant, and equipment. That was your gross carrying value, just price you have purchased. Okay, then you had the depreciation and the amortization. Okay, like which is basically जो fixed assets पे charge हो रहा है. Okay, you have charged it on fixed assets. तो उस पे जो final जो बचा amount, the book value or the carrying value is your net carrying value. So like see in the balance sheet, just the whole amount of it is given, right? You have the total amount of the fixed asset, that's it. But if you want to know that what fixed asset the company owns and what was the gross carrying value or the historical purchase value of those assets and what was the depreciation charged on those assets, then in that case you can go to notes to account and get to know everything. Okay, and all these things are mentioned here for each and every, and even for the intangible assets as well. Then the right of use of assets, as I talked about when I explained to you in the session about the leasing, the operating lease and the financing lease and the differences between the two. तो अगर यहाँ पे वो depreciation charge कर रहा है, it means the lease is a financing lease and the company has it in its own book of accounts. And जो charge नहीं कर रहा है, जिसका वो rental expense बस P&L में दिया हुआ है, so that's an operating lease. Okay, so इसका भी like they have thing like they might have taken land on lease and that is the leasehold land, the buildings, vehicles, all these have been taken on lease. देखो यहाँ लिखा हुआ है the company has adopted इतना for leasing. The company incurred 12.2 million for the year ended towards expenses related to the short-term leases of low value assets and variable leases. तो वहां पे कंपनी ने अपना पैसा खर्च करा. Non-current investments, no way, like which are like not the short-term investments and investments like which can be realized for more than 1 year के बाद. तो यहाँ पे your tax-free bonds, यहाँ पे tax नहीं लगता. Equity shares की value, they are holding an investment. And this has been transferred from the comprehensive income as I told. And in the session, when I was talking about comprehensive income, I clearly told you that when investments are your sole business, अपनी खुद की investments हैं, तो किस में आएंगी? अपनी खुद की बैलेंस शीट में. बट अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स कहीं और करी हैं, देन कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इनकम में आएंगी. एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इनकम से दे वुड बी एडजस्टेड इनटू इक्विटी. सेम यहाँ पे बिकॉज दे हैव मेड adjustments in Sahadri Agro and Dairy Private Limited. Then the market value of quoted investments, these were the unquoted. यहाँ पे like they have not mentioned. Then the quoted investments, we have the non-current loans like which have to be received because यहाँ पे loans दिए हैं and they are talking about assets. Okay. Secured considered good loans to employees, some security deposits, loans to employees, then some other current assets, non-current assets, some capital advances, payments under the protest with government authorities. वहाँ पे कुछ पैसा दिया है. Then they have talked about inventories, that what was included in the raw material, and they were following the FIFO method. हमने स्टार्टिंग में पढ़ा था. पैकेजिंग, फिनिश गुड्स, इसको like they're taking into consideration and calculating the sum up. Plus the current investments you have at amortized cost, quoted and unquoted. Then you have the trade receivables, unsecured, means like there is no collateral behind these. Cash and cash equivalents, all this has been mentioned. Then they further mention about their bank balances. Yeah. All these bank balances, other than current cash, all these things have been mentioned clearly. Current loans, secured considered, your unsecured loans, all these things. So your secured loans are basically that have a collateral behind it. And unsecured loans are those loans which do not have a collateral behind it. मतलब इन लोन्स के पीछे कोई एसेट नहीं होगा, अगर लोन पे ऑफ नहीं करा, ठीक है, तो कंपनी के पीछे कोई उसकी प्लांट मशीनरी नहीं होगी, मतलब कि प्लांट मशीनरी को बेच के पैसे कमा लिए, राइट. Unsecured, the credit impaired is basically something allowance for impairment, मतलब कि क्रेडिट दिया था बट पैसा नहीं आया. Then other current assets they have given, other current financial assets recoverable from related parties, all this. Other financial assets, they talked about the derivative assets. Then the other current assets they have talked about, because when you will go to balance sheet, you will just have this head. But if you further want to know like about what was exactly in the other current assets, you can get to know. Unsecured loans, advances given to suppliers, balances of government authorities, all these things have been given. Equity share capital. Now, what exactly is forming within your equity share capital is mentioned here. Equity shares, your rights, preferences, equity shares by holding companies. So, equity shares and preference shares कहाँ से हैं, किसमें invested हैं खुद के, all that has been mentioned. Plus the important section of other equity of general reserves, retained earnings, items of other comprehensive income, effective portion of cash flow hedges. All this has been mentioned clearly. And cash flow hedges क्या होते हैं? These terms I've talked in detail. Then they've talked about that what exactly is the general reserve, the retained earnings, effective portion of cash flow hedges, equity investment through comprehensive income. The basis of calculation, like when I was talking about these things, like when I was talking about in the initial session about all these terms, तो वहाँ पे मैंने बोला था. The non-current borrowings, unsecured loans, all these things are here. Your non-current provisions. And deferred tax assets, I explained you clearly कि deferred tax assets क्या होते हैं and deferred tax liabilities क्या होती हैं. अब यहाँ पे नेट लिया है बेसिकली DTA में से लाइक DTL माइनस कर दिया, ठीक है. Other current liabilities they have talked about. That what are the other current liabilities? But current borrowings, unsecured loans, all these have been mentioned. That is basically each and every item like which was in your P&L or the balance sheet or the cash flow statement. If you want to know उस item का मतलब कि sum up की value दी होती थी. अगर simple जानने कि उसके अंदर exactly है क्या, then you have all this. Secured loans, अब गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट्स भी कुछ दे दिए जाते हैं. Now see, it has taken loans from Karnataka and Himachal Pradesh. And interest-free loans हैं which are repayable after 7 years and 8 years दूसरा वाला. And repayment like 21 से start होगी. Because वहाँ पे the company is basically trying to expand the manufacturing facilities. इसीलिए. Then you have these other current liabilities. Other current financial liabilities are there. You have the current provisions, pensions and all, and other current liabilities. क्या क्या दिए गए हैं? GST and all, because that's a liability. Advance from customers, others, current provisions, maybe pensions and all. These things have been given to you. So each and every item का particular amount if you want to know. And if you think that I went fast with all these items I've talked about in the previous session. कि ये चीजें होती क्या हैं. Unpaid dividend नहीं हुआ है. So unpaid dividend is a kind of liability for the company, right? Because when the dividend is unpaid, so like what basically is the journal entry as per accounting is the retained earnings debit to the dividends payable. And once the dividends are paid, it's dividend payable to cash, right? So it's a liability. So ये हुआ, and in the next session I'll be talking about the notes to accounts of the P&L statement. Okay. So see you in